So now we're going to implement the bookmark functionality. And basically what I want to happen is when someone comes to a page and they click this bookmark button, I want it to add the property to their bookmarks array in the database. Because if you remember, in our users, we have this bookmarks array. And then later on, we can put those in the saved properties page. So when we click the button, it'll make a request to the API, it'll add it to the database, or remove, because if it's already there, then I want this button to say remove bookmark, so they can easily toggle it. So this will take a couple videos, because now I just want to update the field in the database, but then we also want to update the UI to show if it's bookmarked or not, and so they can remove and add and so on. So let's start off with the API route. That's usually, if you guys haven't noticed by now, that's usually the route that I like to take, pun intended. So let's go into properties. I'm sorry, not properties. We want to go into app API, and then let's create a new folder and a new route for bookmarks. So we're going to say bookmarks, and in this folder, let's create a file called route.js. Okay, so this is going to be a post request because we're going to be sending some data. We're going to send the property ID because we need to know which property to bookmark. So let's do some importing at the top here. We're going to bring in our ConnectDB because obviously we need to use the database. We're going to import our user model, and we're going to import the property model. So property from models, and then we're also going to need the user as well. So we're going to import our custom file, the get session user. Oops, get session user from the utils, and that should do it. And then let's export. Whoops, why does it keep doing that? Let's export a new function called post, because it'll be a post request, async. Okay, and then we're going to pass our request. All right, now we're going to open up a try catch here, and let's first connect to the database. So we're going to await on ConnectDB. Then we want to get the two things, the property ID and the user. So we can get the property ID because it's not going to be sent in the URL. So we're not going to do this where we have, params. We're not going to do that. We can get the body data with request. So this right here, .json. So let's say const, and we're going to destructure property ID, and we're going to destructure that from await request.json parentheses. So that should get us the property ID. So to get the user, we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing. We'll say session user, get that from await get session user, which we brought in from that file. Then we want to first check to make sure there's a session and a user in that session. So if not session or not session dot user ID, then let's return a new response, and we're just going to say user ID is required, and we want to send a status. Let's do a 401 status. Okay, so that'll check the session. Then to get the user, we simply destructure the user ID from session user, which is this right here, which comes from that file. All right, so now we have both the property ID and the user ID. Now we want to get the actual user from the database based on their ID. So let's say find user in database, Okay, so we can do that. Let's say const user, and then we'll set that to await, and then use the user model, and then find one. And we're going to pass in here an object with underscore ID. Set that to user ID. Or you could use find by ID. Doesn't really matter. So we get the user. Then let's check to see if the property is already bookmarked, because obviously we don't want to keep adding the same one. So let's say check if user is bookmarked or property is bookmarked. So let's create a variable. We're going to use let here because we're going to be updating it. So let is bookmarked. Say user dot bookmarks dot includes. So we're just searching the array for the property ID. All right. Then I'm going to just initialize a message variable because the message is going to be different depending on if we're making the is bookmarked true or false. So we'll say if is bookmarked, then we'll put a comment here. If already bookmarked, remove it. So we can do that with user dot bookmarks dot, and then we'll use pull and pass in here the property ID, and then the message is going to be bookmark removed successfully, and then we're going to set is bookmarked to false. Okay, and then let's add an else, then we want to do the opposite. So we'll say if not bookmarked, add it. So we'll take user.bookmarks and we're going to push onto it now, property ID, and then the message will say bookmark added successfully, and ultimately this message, whatever it is going to show in a toast, and then we want to set is bookmarked to true. Okay, and then we want to save it to the database, so let's come down here and say await user, because it's in the user collection, dot save, and then we'll return a new response, and that response is going to have the message and the is bookmarked value, whether it's true or false. So let's do JSON.stringify, and we're going to pass in here some curly braces with the message and is bookmarked. And then for the status, so let's go right here and add status 200. All right, and then in the catch, let's just do a console log of the error, and then return a new response, and we'll just say something went wrong, and we'll give it a status of 500. All right, now when I pushed to Vercel, when I deployed to Vercel, I had an issue where it was having an issue using SSR with this route. So after looking into it, I fixed it with just a single line, and that's going to be an export of a dynamic variable set to force dynamic. And I found it on, this is the documentation page. So the route segment options allows you to configure the behavior of a page layout or route handler, which is what we're doing, by directly exporting the following variables. So what we want to do is export dynamic as force dynamic. Because this will work fine without it locally, but once you try to push to Vercel, you're going to get an error when you deploy. So I'm going to go under the imports here and then say export const dynamic and set that to force dash dynamic. Okay, so that's our route. Yeah, I think we should be good as far as that goes. Now we want to handle the front end. So basically when we click that button, so let's go to components, bookmark button. And I think what we'll do is stop the video here, and in the next one we'll implement the click handler and the request.